Hey everybody, I'm Dean and welcome to Photo Blue. Today I thought I'd talk about perspective and distortion in photography. I'm going to use this photograph of the Bidens and the Carters to demonstrate what's going on. In this photograph, the Bidens look much larger than the Carters. And so a lot of it has to do with the distortion from an ultra-wide angle lens, more than likely. And so I'm going to show you some clues about this and how distortion in an ultra-wide angle or a fisheye lens works. So to start out with, if you look down here at President Carter's feet, they look really larger than they should be. And that's because of the distortion of an ultra-wide angle lens. And so if we look here at this other photograph, here are two photographs that I got from pixels.com using ultra-wide angle or fisheye lenses, just to give you an idea of the distortion. In the first image, this man's foot looks huge compared to his head, and that's because it's closer to the lens, and the lens, because it's so wide angle, it distorts, makes things that are very close to the lens look much larger than things that are even just slightly farther away. The same holds true for the second picture, where this man is riding a skateboard, and the skateboard looks huge compared to his head and his body. But this is a normal size skateboard. So you can see what's happening with distortion in the case of things closer to the lens. This is happening with President Carter's shoes right here. And even to an extent, you can see with this piano bench here, it actually looks bigger than it should, or taller than it should, compared to this chair. So it actually looks much taller than it probably is compared to the chair, at least. So it's all relative, basically. Now the other thing that you'll notice is that the people in the center of the picture, they're actually sat back farther than the people on the edge of the picture. President Carter is kind of at an angle, and his feet are closer, so that's why they look so much bigger. But it's kind of distorted because the chair is turned, and this shoulder is farther back than this shoulder. He looks just a little smaller than he would normally. And with Rosalind here, her chair is back farther. Maybe it looks like there may be 2 feet or so between the tip of President Biden's shoe and this chair. And so that's a big distortion for an ultra-wide angle lens. And so he looks much bigger than Rosalind. He probably is taller than she is, but not as big as that, probably. So that's adding to the illusion. Now, there's another thing about the illusion. You'll notice this is straight right here. This line is straight. And that kind of clues you to the fact that there's been some sort of distortion correction on this, because if it is an ultra-wide angle lens, we'd get this effect here. If we go back over here, here's some pictures that I took, and this one is uncorrected on the right, and on the left it's corrected. And you see the uncorrected one, these lines curve, but they don't. In real life, they're just straight. But the distortion towards the edge of the lens is bending this. This other picture is corrected, and so it's straightened it out. But to straighten it out, it's got to stretch some stuff out. And when it stretches it out, it adds to the illusion, and it makes it look even bigger. So in this photograph, because of the perspective of it, and because it's a building and everything, it doesn't look unusual. It just looks like it's an intended effect. But when we go back to this photograph, any distortion along the edges like that are going to add to the effect to make whoever's closer to the edge look even larger. And because of the fact that this line is straight here, you know that it was probably curved like this. So it's actually probably making President Biden's shoulders look even broader than they normally might. And as we get towards the center, things get smaller. So this makes Rosalind Carter look a little smaller too. So just for fun, what we're going to do is we're going to do some edits to this. I'm not going to be able to correct it entirely because it would take time, and I don't even think with time you could correct this that great. But what we'll do is we'll kind of try to make it look more normal than it does here, or make it look more natural, let's say. So one thing is, President Biden, because of his position in front of Rosalind Carter and the distortion there, he actually looks to be really the largest person in the picture, and he's actually making the two people in the center look smaller. And so if we actually crop this photograph and bring this in like this looks a little more natural. Just doing that makes it look less unusual, and the only thing is President Carter's feet still look a little larger for his body, but the picture looks a little more natural here, and it doesn't look as much like there's anything out of place. If we go back and undo the crop and go back and look at this in comparison, it almost looks like President Biden is pasted into the picture. And that whoever pasted him in needed to reduce his size just slightly. So it doesn't look natural because of the distortion and the distortion correction along here. So if we go back and we'll redo the crop and bring that in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tool called Liquify. And what I'm going to do in it is I'm going to make President Carter's body closer to the size in relation to his feet, so that his feet don't look so big, so they look normal sized. But it's going to distort him in other ways just because of the angle and everything, so it's not going to be perfect or anywhere near perfect, but it will give you an idea of what's going on with the perspective distortion. So by redistorting it, so to speak, we're going to correct that. If we had the original photograph without the distortion correction on it, we could probably correct it much easier, but we've taken a distorted photograph, or the photograph we have was originally distorted because of the lens, and corrections in the lens or software flattened it out and made things look more exaggerated. So it distorted it in a different way, so to speak. So let's go up here. We're going to go to Filter, and we're going to go to Liquify. And Liquify is a tool they use a lot to mess with photographs, sometimes to correct perspective and distortion, other times to actually distort images for artistic purposes. So I'm going to adjust the brush shot size here, and let's zoom in a little bit so we're a little bit closer. Let's see if I can make that just a little bit smaller. Is that going to work better? Okay. So by adjusting the brush size, it adjusts how much we pull at a time. So we're going to go like this, and we're going to just try to slowly pull this up. And pull it out. So we're going to try to make it look as good as we can, but I think it's going to distort his face somewhat. Now he's a little bit larger. His body's a little bit larger here, so his feet don't look quite as large. So it's in a better proportion. It's not perfect, but we've pulled it out. So I mean, you can see he looks more normal sized here. So that's what was happening. His body looked smaller, but his feet were bigger. So in Jill Biden's up a little closer. In fact, she's kind of, part of her at least is closer to his feet than the rest of him. And because of that, she looks a little bit larger like his feet does. And when we make his body a little larger in comparison to his feet, the picture, at least the proportions on the picture, look a little closer than it would. If you took enough time, you could probably make this look pretty good using different size brushes and taking a bunch of time. But we've distorted his face and part of his body. I just wanted to mainly show you the increasing the size of the body to match the feet, and things look a little more normal. You can also see over here this picture has distorted a bit, or the edge of it. To give you an idea of how this tool can work, if we go over here, we can actually start to straighten that out. If we took a little bit more time, we could get it pretty good. So you can actually straighten edges out. I probably have to pull it down a little bit. So taking a bunch of time and different sized brushes, we can actually straighten this line out so it looked more natural. We can pull this out a little bit. See, so we can fix distortion on different things. It just takes a little bit of time. So you can see now the proportions look a little bit more normal. I probably have the head a little too big, and in the middle of his body should probably be stretched out a little more. But you get the idea. His feet were out of proportion to his body because of the distortion from the lens and the effect of a fisheye or ultra-wide angle lens. So if we go back here, let's undo the crop, go to the original picture. There it is right there. So that's why this picture looks a little bit odd and the proportions look off. It's actually an effect of not only a wide angle or ultra-wide angle lens, but distortion correction on it. This has been Photo Blue, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like.